So to start with this transformation, I searched many jungles until I found one big enough to suit our needs. The first step was to remove every single tree in the area and do some general terraforming to make the place look more interesting. At this early stage of building, I didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted the terrain to look like. So I started by laying out shapes for mountains. Some of them though won't make it to the final cut. For this particular transformation, I tried to work on a slightly smaller scale than what I generally do, to make it feel like a place that could be found in a vanilla Minecraft world. After smoothing the terrain, I had this idea for a triangle temple, for which I used basic geometry knowledge to build an equilateral triangle that will serve as the basic structural shape. Don't worry, this is not the main temple, it's part of the ruins, which we are going to talk about in a minute. I carried on with some major changes, both in the color palette and the location. With that in place, I cut the big mountain in half to fit more on the vanilla world, and then went ahead and added some arches between, which ended up being one of my favorite features of the landscape. The idea of this transformation is not only to transform the main structure, but to transform the gameplay experience all in all. I believe jungles have a lot of potential for adventures, therefore I did my best to add more interesting places to explore. With that said, I did work on some ancient ruins, perhaps from a jungle village that prospered in the past and lived on platforms to prevent the rivers from flooding their houses when the flow increased. The true purpose of these ruins is to make the area easily recognizable. With the jungle temple as it is, you generally find it with no effort once you have elytras, or you can even find it walking. In both cases, there's no real challenge or reward. I want to hide the main temple from plain sight, so it would be harder to find if one decides to explore the jungle on foot. Nevertheless, the player will still have the hint of being close to one by finding these ancient ruins, which are way easier to spot. The immersive feel of adventure and exploration that this feature adds is already a big reward. At the same time, if you are in the late game and need to find the jungle temple for any reason, then it should be pretty easy to spot from the sky, so we will preserve the vanilla experience of getting in, grabbing the loot and getting out whenever you need it. With that said, and after changing the terrain a bit more with paths and bamboo, it was time to start adding some lashiness. I built 4 different custom jungle trees with varying sizes and shapes to fill the entire jungle. The vines grow a lot and really invade the entire tree, so I later had to remove them. As for decorations, I designed some big roots to scatter around the place and make it harder to traverse when walking. I then went around pasting all the trees and roots, and it's incredible how that simply changed the entire atmosphere of the build. We are safe to say that this is a jungle now. Finally, the time we've all been waiting for, the main structure transformation itself. I first enlarged the cave a bit more, added a central platform for the structure and combined the foggy glass streets with the roots to achieve a feel of danger and death around. The next step was to go and steal a vanilla pyramid. I brought it inside and divided it into 4 different segments to transform. Starting from the bottom to the top, I enlarged the base platform and added some gates that will lead inside and underground, sending the player into the dungeons. The second part was transformed into simple pillars that will also serve the purpose of containing staircases to reach the main chamber and hold it in place, of course. For the chamber, I maintained the same shape as the vanilla structure. I then added bigger details without changing too much the main characteristics of the original build. That way, it will make it easy to identify. For the final top part, I applied the same concept. Nothing too complicated, but soon we will come back to it. I chose a block palette for the structure similar to the original, taking also advantage of the new blocks like calcite and copper, which fit the theme perfectly. I polished the structure and added details with smaller blocks. I even worked on the interior, which I'm not going to show here, to not spoil the secrets, puzzles and challenges that this place will hold. Taking some creative license, I designed a head for the temple. inspired by ancient South and Central American civilizations, which in my opinion were perfect to top and finish the entire temple. One side of the head represents the moon and holds some diamond blocks to make it worth finding these places for looting early game. The other side represents the sun, with a lot of gold and copper blocks that might also be worth looting if anyone happens to need them. The only thing missing was to add some vines and smaller vegetation around the entire view. So with that, I'm pleased to say that this epic transformation is finally complete.